Coach Schultz, thank you so much for inviting me into the Edge of Greatness Summit. Man, it's just an honor to be here and a part of this and to speak on the topic of purpose. Purpose is a big part of the work that I'm involved in on a day-to-day basis with the people that I'm working with, and it's a huge part of my life. I'm going to borrow from a good friend of mine, dear friend, Dr. Rob McKenna, and this guy is a PhD in organizational development, organizational psychology. He's also a faith-based man, and so he really got deep into the notion of purpose and calling, and a lot of his thoughts inform how I show up. If you think about purpose, there is this notion of having a purpose, and if we take it into the faith-based space, it's being created with and for a purpose. And a lot of times we combine the notion of purpose with calling. We use language like my purpose and then my calling. And I'd like to separate those two things apart from one another. Understanding my purpose is critical. It's central to the work that I do, in that if I'm living out of or working into my purpose, then I know I'm doing what I was created to do. Understanding what that is becomes critically important. So how does a person understand and know what their purpose is? Well, you've got to understand and know yourself. You have to have experiences in the world. You have to know the world and know yourself in the context of the world. You have to try new things. You have to experiment. You have to push yourself to an edge and understand. But along the way, be aware and be open. Who am I and how am I showing up? How do I respond to the world around me? And where can I add value? This is going to enlighten you as to what your purpose is. Now, if you live in that faith-based space, if you are a faith-based person, you might ask, what is it that my Creator has created me for? Why am I here? And if that's not your thing, understanding yourself in the context of the world and illuminating what that purpose is becomes central to how you're going to go forward and listen for your call. And this is an important distinction. See, some people will say, my calling is, as though you could ascribe to yourself your own calling. But let's try this experiment. Take your cell phone out and call yourself. Who's going to answer? Well, nobody's going to answer. It's going to go to voicemail. And if that can be an analogy for this conversation, the calling is actually external, where the purpose is internal. What you were created to do, and created at birth, before birth, created by way of experience, created by way of the relationships that you've had and that you've lost, the things that you've built, the teams you've been a part of, the lessons that you've learned. All of these things create who you are today. In fact, the things that you will experience in your life will create who you are into the future, and those things come together to form your purpose. And so here's the really fun part, is when you are clear about your purpose and you can focus on that purpose and let that inform your vision while also staying open to the call, you'll know when you hear the call how to respond. And it may be the call for you in this season of your life is different than any other season before. When you know your purpose, you know how to show up in that call. And it certainly will be, I can guarantee you this, that you will be called into something different in the future. When you know what your purpose is, you know how to show up in response to that call. So there is an element of awareness, of knowing yourself and being clear about your purpose, but also being aware and listening for the call. So let's think of it this way. Maybe in your youth, you had a purpose to lead, to play sports. And so you showed up on the field as the captain. You knew that your purpose was to lead. And when you were called onto the field, you knew that purpose of leadership had a place to show up as being the team captain. Okay, maybe in that same analogy, your purpose was to be a supporter, an encourager. And so your purpose on the field as an athlete was different than the purpose of the team captain. You were called onto the field, and your purpose was to be the supporter, the uniter, the bringing together. You're the one that's on the field that's always cheering people on. Maybe your purpose is to be the playmaker, the shot caller. Maybe you're the one that has the analytical brain, and that's a part of your purpose. And so you show up on the field and you're the one calling the audible in the huddle. Okay, let's take this out of a sports analogy. Let's bring it into business. Maybe you have a mathematical, analytical brain. Maybe that is the way that you are energized and you're oriented to. And so when you're called into business, you know that your purpose is to be the analyst, the risk manager, the chief financial officer, the one that's doing the calculations on the ROI. Or maybe you understand that your purpose is relationships and evangelism. And so when you're called into business, you know that your purpose is to show up and do customer relationships. to be in sales. You combine all of these things, and here, I'm telling you the story of my life. Showing up on the field, recognizing leadership, showing up in business, understanding analysis and finance. I understand my purpose, and then where I was called, where I have been called at this stage in my life, in my career, is to help guide and advise those who are involved in business, through leadership, through finance. I understand my purpose very clearly, and so I can respond to that call. And what does this allow me to do? This allows me to show up with energy. I can be excited about the work because I know I'm living out of my purpose and that I'm stepping into work that is directly connected to my purpose. It also means that I can show up with integrity. I can show up and sit with a client and say very confidently, I'm the right man for this job because I know what my purpose is. I've been created for a purpose. I've gone through years and years and years of experience forging who I am to be created for this purpose. And when I'm called into action, I know what I'm supposed to do. And I know when I'm the right man for the job and when I'm not, because here again, I'm clear about my purpose. So Coach Schultz, when I'm thinking about the 7 pillars, these 7 pillars of greatness, and I think about how important purpose is, not one of the 7 is more important than any of the others. And certainly all 7 of them are necessary. And so just suffice it to say that purpose is critically important. Coach Schultz, once again, I really appreciate the invite, the opportunity to share some of these thoughts with you. If I summarize it, knowing your purpose, knowing who you are, understanding what you've been created for to do in this season, and listen for the call. When the call comes, you know you're the right one for the job. You can step into that with confidence, with integrity, with energy, and you're gonna be the very best that you possibly can be. You're gonna be great. Thanks again.